Want to use a PGR in your cereals but have no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as one tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Joined right now by the Chief Executive Officer of Farm Credit Canada is Justine Hendricks. Hey, Justine, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you, Sean?
Pretty good. It's been kind of wet
I know.
in the east. What's
I know.
going on?
I know, but some of that wetness went to the prairies, and that's a super good sign. So I'm not complaining. I'm sure you're not either.
Amen. Not at all. It's nice to see some green hills around here. Absolutely.
I can, for sure.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you today because I wanted to get a better understanding on the shift that Farm Credit Canada is currently under. We heard about this pre-budget, and it was definitely made, I guess, a little bit more clear in the budget, but I think there's some stuff to dig in here. When we talk about FCC taking on more risk,
yep,
what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so I guess the last time you and I spoke was when it was a Future Food Conference, right? Yeah. And we laid out there kind of some of our commitments we had in terms of renewed focus on the industry. But before I get to the budget, Sean, I just want to reiterate one thing that I think is super, super important. It's to remember for the last 60 plus years where FCC has operated, we've been the dedicated lender to the primary ag and food industry, full stop. And that's not changing, period, right? So what we've been embarking on in the last year and supported by some of the announcements in the budget is this recognition we've consulted across the country with clients, stakeholders, you name it, in terms of as the needs of the industry are changing, whether it's because of different weather patterns, whether it's the required investments, because we know we require more innovation, we want to continue to improve productivity. What does an organization like FCC do in order to continue to play the role that it always has? So that's kind of really where it starts. And that's why that shift that you're talking about, maybe what I'd say instead of a shift, it's an expansion, because what we've always done isn't going away, which is being that senior secured lender there to make sure that we're there when our customers across the value chain are looking to operate within this amazing industry.
Okay, so what is this expansion then? Where is FCC diving into now in the financial space that maybe you weren't previously?
Yeah, no. So I think we talked about it a bit the last time, but it was early stages. For one is we've been for the last, 15 years doing a bit of venture capital, and we've put in over $500 million, but it's been from a fund to a fund, right? That we've invested. One of those changes or that expansion is now we're going to start going direct into the ecosystem. So doing some private equity. We're not going to do it all on our own. We'll have partners alongside in order to do it, but that'd be an example of this expansion that you're talking about. And again, it was as a result of stakeholders across the country saying, listen, FCC, you can play a big part in helping the ecosystem at all the different stages of companies, particularly on the innovation side. So why don't you come on board and expand beyond what you've been doing fund to fund? So that's kind of an example of something that's going to be different that we didn't do before.
So does that mean that in the pre-FCC doing this, is there a lack of venture capital then? Are you backfilling, or there's a void here that you see, or why say, hey, FCC, it'd be great if you participated here?
Yeah, no, I think there is. So void, or I'd say there's a need to have more players at the table. There's lots of data that shows that, if you put in a couple of factors, right? Combine the need to constantly innovate, which this sector is known for. Combine the need for improving productivity, which I'd say is a Canadian thing, but that also applies to the sector. Combined with a need that we're a net exporter of the goods we grow in this country, and we want to continue to keep that position. In order to do that, and in response to some of the new realities with different weather patterns, there are some pretty significant dollars that are required to continue to support this industry. That's where, hey, FCC, you've dabbled in some areas of it. It'd be great if you were a bigger player amongst other players in these different spaces. So that's how we're expanding some of the product suite that we currently offer.
Any specific focuses? Is this about ag tech and productivity, or is this about processing? You know, I know the food side of the industries. You've talked, yourself and JP Gervais and others have talked a lot about that space. So where are the focuses?
So when we did our research in terms of identifying in the market where was the greatest need, one of the conclusions we came to, Sean, is probably we need to be involved in all aspects of it. The challenge we're going to have is we can't do that from day one. Right. So what I would say is first is we're going to start doing things in partnerships, because we know that there's funds out there that do some really cool work. So going alongside them and going directly and leveraging their strategies is going to be step one. We basically need to build out the team, quite frankly, get the capacity, and then we'll be able to start to operate at the different levels. I also want to add, Sean, I think it's worthwhile for your audience. So there's private equity, but there's also different forms of capital, right? Whether you talk about sub-debt and others. And over time, that too, as we recognize, is probably needs to be part of the suite of what we have to offer. Very much over, I'll say, the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to want to build the skills in-house to be able to really deliver on that. But over time, you'd probably see us involved in all stages.
So what are the KPIs, the key performance indicators here? What does success look like for Farm Credit Canada in this space?
I'd almost think that you've been talking to my head of strategy before, where you and I having this chat, Sean, and she's looking to test me live in front of your audience. Listen, I'll tell you two things, Sean. One of the KPIs is how much capital we can deploy. Full stop, right? Okay. And you talked a bit about the budget, but the ability for an FCC to deploy more capital in some of these spaces is definitely one of the KPIs. But without going through the details of each and every one of them, if you allow me, I'll just take one as an example in terms of how we're thinking about it a bit differently. So one of the areas where we definitely want to put more investment is in young farmers, right? We know critical in terms of the transition. We all know kind of the realities of entering into the space is becoming more and more unattainable. So how does an FCC and others kind of have the right product suite to support them? So our definition of a young farmer is a farmer that's under 40, right? And up until now, we'd measured the success of it. And that KPI was how many more farmers under 40 does FCC support? I can tell you, we probably have the bulk involvement in the market. But as we were looking at the strategy and saying, hey, how can we really know if we're having the impact we want? Maybe what we need to look at is the farmer that was under 40, is he or she still farming at 45?
Right.
And you know what I mean? So that would be a KPI that we would start to want to look at, because, you could suggest that us coming in with capital is probably the easy part of the equation, more or less. But us being there for the long run and being able to say, hey, the dollar we put in 2 years ago has resulted in this customer remaining in farming, increasing the land that they farm, whatever it is, I think becomes a much bigger testament to where our impact is. So that's some of the KPIs that we're starting to think about. We haven't put them all on paper yet, but it's kind of part of that thinking that we want to apply. So I think we'll be in a better position to measure truly the difference that we make in this sector.
Yeah, and any investor they have a timeline in mind that they need to get a return from, right? And so there's non-patient capital and there's patient capital. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my estimation would be is that farm credit, in terms of how long it can take to get from concept to commercialization to truly scalability, requires patient capital. That is something that I think you would probably bring to the market that would be different than maybe some of the other players.
Yeah, no, it's you've done good homework, Sean, and you got good experience. I mean, and that's where, if you look at some of the sister financial crowns, That's part of the reputation we build over time in the market is, yes, part of our job is to be patient, right? And to really work with those companies. I think if we go back to the private equity side on specifically as an example, I think with FCC and what's going to be part of the strategy is really making sure that we can be an active player in the ecosystem. So what do I mean by that? It's one thing to be there at the early stage for the company as they're looking to commercialize, right, or seed capital and so forth. But from a Canadian point of view, how do you support the tech company or the ag tech company that comes out of British Columbia to be able to go across the country faster? Well, FCC can be huge in terms of connecting that company to different clients that can actually test the technology, hopefully help it commercialize faster, hopefully then make that company maybe sell to other bigger, large Canadian corporates, which is, there's a lot of written material on that in terms of some of the challenges in Canada with Canadian tech, and then add the ag tech. So I'd say one of the differentiator we're going to have is we're going to want to play in both of those areas, not just supplying the capital, but if I may, helping that capital become successful.
Is this adding more competition in the market, or like, because some people may say, okay, whoa, hold on here. The valuations are more favorable in Canada versus some of the other geographies. Why do I need my tax I'm running another fund. Why do I need my tax dollars? Because FCC is a Crown Corp competing against me. Talk about that relationship and if somebody has that response.
Yeah. Now, first off is remember, FCC is a profitable corporation, right? So we do not depend on Canadian tax dollars in order to be able to do what we do every day. So that's first thing to remember. Second one is, Sean, everything, all the thinking we've done into this, we haven't done in isolation. We've connected with the other players in the market. There's tons of stories and literature that supports that there is a gap. So I think to your comment or your question, even those that would suggest that, I think would recognize that there's huge opportunity in Canada and there is not enough capital that's going into these spaces. So we're coming into an area that is needed to have more capital. The second thing is, we were talking earlier about the patient capital element to it. It becomes part of how you build a transaction overall. So having players like us that sometimes will take on the additional risk at the early stage or stay in for longer, I think others will actually welcome that. And our goal isn't to eat at their lunch. On the contrary, we're kind of thinking industry at large, Team Canada, what do we have to do? And if we really want and believe, as I know you and I do, the success of this industry and its capabilities of what it can do, what we're about to do, I think will be a welcome addition.
Justine, thanks so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it. I know you've got a crazy busy schedule, so I appreciate you fitting us in. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Anytime, Sean.